the trust that you build is built on that authenticity, that vulnerability. You know, one thing you're gonna have to accept in life and sales is not everybody's gonna like you. And the more you try to please other people, the less people are gonna like you because you're just a chameleon bouncing around.
In order for someone to like and trust you at a deep emotional level requires authenticity, which requires vulnerability.
When did you really start to own who you are, and what were the downsides at first? Because there are some downsides, right? Some people aren't gonna like you, but when you really own into it and you learn how to take the edges off who you are and your personality, I think it can really open a lot of doors for people.
Imagine having direct access to someone who's navigated life's toughest terrains and come out stronger. Someone who's been there, done that, and can guide you with empathy, experience, and honesty. This isn't just advice. It's a lifeline, a strategy session, a chance to learn from my journey so you can accelerate yours. Without the ability to be self-aware and introspective, the ability for you to get to where you want to go, nearly impossible. Hey everybody, welcome back to the David Gutman podcast. Really interesting guy here. I think you might be the youngest person I've ever had on my podcast. So Bridger Rogers. Bridger, that's an unusual name.
It is.
So before we get into the background around your name, so from bag boy to six figures, like literally bagging groceries?
Yeah, literally bagging groceries. I grew up in a small town in North Idaho. It is very beautiful. A lot of, Hollywood celebrities get summer homes there. Right, like one summer, it was on the news that like J-Lo, was out, and she was literally in the exact bay that I grew up in. So it's almost kind of like the California now, where you got these middle class people and you got these ultra wealthy celebrities. So I grew up kind of lower middle class, and I was like, man, I just want to make some money, get a car. My parents didn't hand me anything. I had to go get money for my driver's license, education, and all this stuff. So I got a job bagging groceries because I knew someone in class and her dad was the general manager. So I started bagging groceries. And I remember I was putting literally the bread on the shelves with my buddy. And he's talking about how, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to do 4 years and then I'm going to get out and I'm going to, get a job. And like, well, what's your goal? I want to make 60, 80 grand a year. I'm like, dude, I'm not waiting 6 years to make that kind of money. And so I started reading personal development books like Think and Grow Rich, right? Brian Tracy, Psychology is Selling, different books. And it just opened my eyes that there's a whole new world out there for people that didn't grow up in money, right? I started seeing guys like Grant Cardone, playing guitar, and I see Grant Cardone pop up on his ads. He's like, you can be wealthy. You can live in these houses. You just got to know the right things. You got to build the right businesses. And so I got into sales, and we can get into that. But yeah, literally bagging groceries in the freezing cold in North Idaho.
What did your folks do in Idaho?
So my dad was a carpenter. So he made maybe
Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. Like Jesus. Yeah. So
we had Easter yesterday, right?
Yeah, Easter was yesterday. Yeah. Did you go to any of were you here during your
No,
Easter?
no, we flew in this morning.
Okay, cool. Do you go to a church down in
No, I'm not particularly. I did when we were in Montana though. I know we talked a little bit off camera about our honeymoon in Montana. I did get baptized in Montana.
Did you?
I did.
Oh, very nice.
Much to my wife and daughter's surprise. But but not particularly religious.
You got cold plunged in Montana.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, very nice. We'll have to chat about that. But what was your question? Sorry.
Oh, so just your
folks.
So your folks and actually I forgot my question now.
Yeah. Well, you asked me what my parents do. So my dad was a carpenter.
Right.
But unfortunately, and fortunately, because I'll share kind of the double-edged side of things. I think that in life, I didn't invent this, but you've heard your test can become your testimony. Your pain can become your purpose. And so when I was like 9 years old, we got into a car accident, me and my dad. And, I have a little bit of spinal damage, but not, I'm still able to work out. I just have to have good massages and stuff, but it did make an impact. But my dad was older, the joints are not the same at 50. And so he ended up not being able to work anymore because he was in so much pain, herniated discs. And, he wasn't a wealthy guy. He was living paycheck to paycheck. And pretty soon, he couldn't fulfill on the jobs he had. And we went into a state of literally panic from the time I was like 9 years old till I was about 14, 15 years old. I mean, it was we were like, every month was like scraping together dollars to not lose the house. I was getting told no every time I wanted something to eat. We'd be in town. No, we got to eat at home. so we had to go on food stamps for a while to get off the ground. So I saw that and I felt that. I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like the fear. I don't like the scarcity. I knew people around me that didn't live like this. I was like, there's got to be a better way. And so I was committed at a young age because I lived in that pain of scarcity that one day I was going to be out of that situation. I didn't know how, hadn't seen it, but I knew it was possible.
So did you have a teacher, a coach, someone that, was your sort of guiding light? I mean, because a lot of people in a situation like that have a really hard time switching to an abundance mindset. How did you make that shift?
Still work in progress, obviously. I'm not a multi-millionaire. I've made, about $1 million in commissions in the last 3 years, right? So I'm making pretty good money, what doctors and lawyers make. But the biggest, I guess, thing that I saw around me, maybe people making 120 grand a year, and they were computer programmers. And so I asked my mom, right, because she home educated me. I was homeschooled for 10 years. And I asked my mom, because she was kind of my source of like education, like, Mom, how do I make a lot of money so I don't have to live like this when I grow up? She's like, oh, you got to go to college. And I don't blame her. That's what she was taught, right? And she actually did make pretty good money, because back then you could get a good degree like engineering. You could make pretty good money. But I think times have changed with the speed of AI, technology, the internet. The things that you used to not be able to get access to because there was no internet, no technology, no AI, now you can get access to for next to nothing. That's why I love this info product, digital marketing, podcasting space. Just think about all these shows that now have opened up, got successful people like yourself, that now you can have these incredible conversations with people all around the world. And so I saw that there was a 6-figure potential. I never thought I was going to be able to make millions of dollars ever. Like I thought these people were like born into it, or they did something bad, because I grew up in the church as well. But I still remember this day. I'm playing guitar because I love guitar. I want to be a rock star. And this video comes on, and it's Grant Cardone. And he's like, he's on his beach in Miami, Malibu or something. He's like, yeah, I always wondered as a kid, because he grew up similar, right? His dad passed away when he was a kid, and he grew up in fear and scarcity his whole life. And he's like, I always wondered how these people made so much money. I thought that I would never be able to be successful like this. And then he shared his story, and then he was selling this book. It was called The Millionaire Booklet. And so this was one of the first things that I saw that I was like, man, I think he was the one that sold me I could be wealthy. So I got his Millionaire Booklet. He's like, step one, you got to make a decision. You're going to do whatever it takes. You're going to learn the skills. You're going to do the work. And then you got to do the math. And then he just did the millionaire math. You could sell one thing to make $1 million. That's $1 million. And he just broke it down. I was like, oh. I was like, so if I just learn how to sell and I can figure out how to make a $2,000 commission, I only need to do that. What is that, 500 or 50 times, depending on my math?
Yeah.
And so I was just like, okay, I'm going to go down this path. And then I will say, I got to give credit to one other person the first person that I knew personally that was wealthy, is I was, the next job I got, I was hosting. So I was a host in this little town, and I would greet people and walk them to their table for this little this little French breakfast spot. And one day this girl walks in. She's gorgeous, most beautiful girl I've seen. And so I'm like, wow, this is interesting. And so I ended up chatting with her. I got to know her, I ended up dating her, but her father was a very wealthy man. He'd already exited one company for multiple 8 figures. And they had like the most expensive penthouse in Coeur d'Alene. And so I got to experience for a couple of months kind of what it was like through her going on different trips and events and things that I did during that month. And I went out to coffee with him, and I said, how did you build? I basically interviewed him, podcasted him. I had a notepad and journal, started taking notes, and he told me about personal development. He's like, you got to read books. You got to go to events. You got to learn networking. You got to learn sales. You have to learn sales if you want to be successful. And I was like, what should I read? And he said, The Psychology of Selling, Brian Tracy. So I got into that, and I just started selling what I was passionate about. And I think one of the things you said earlier that I'm excited to chat about is integrity in business. Because there's really 2 ways to make money. You can do it ethically and honest, or you can do it unethically and dishonest. And I never wanted to be in the category of making money but selling my soul or losing my soul. Right? Jesus said, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? So that's kind of my journey for seeing that abundance mindset. I got into these books, started reading books, and we can kind of go from there. But integrity is important to me.
Well, it's interesting because, look, I'm 59.
Really?
Are you actually 20?
I'm 24.
20, okay, 20.
24
Because
now.
I saw from 20, but I wasn't sure if you were actually still 20 or if that was from a while ago.
Yeah. That's when I made my first 6 figures.
Got it. What an interesting journey. But I'm 59, and when I was growing up, like I have a daughter who's 25.
Mhm.
I practically begged her not to go to college, and the reason was I'm like, I'll give you the money. I just think it's a waste. And like again, you want to build a bridge, get an engineering degree. Like
Yeah.
I'm a brain surgeon, although AI might do that better than a person pretty soon. But at least for now, I can understand medical school could make a lot of sense.
Mhm.
But gender studies degree, I mean, like really? Like, come on,
Yeah, well, there are a couple things you can learn how to do in college. You can learn how to get trashed.
Right?
You can learn how to sleep with a lot of people.
Yep.
And,
That's true.
And you can learn how to hate learning, and that's about it.
Honestly, like, so I wrestled in college. And so like, if you were playing, like, you want to play a sport at that level, maybe, but because I was doing that, I wasn't drinking,
Yeah, well, that's different. If you're going to school for sports, like, and you want to become a professional athlete, that's a different path.
Well, again, I was a wrestler, so there was no
Okay.
UFC back then. There wasn't even UFC back then.
Yeah.
But so but it was nowadays college, like you can get a way better degree at, YouTube University than you're going to get even at Harvard, especially these days.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, and so you don't have any college education, is that right?
No, in fact, I actually just had a video go viral. So I used to do dating content.
Right.
I used to teach, kids how to pick up girls, right?
Right.
This is a while ago. It's like 3-4 years ago. But I got millions of views, tens of millions of views on TikTok. And I stopped doing that like 2-3 years ago. I was like, I don't want to be a dating guy. But it was interesting because it took me a while to find the pulse in the market. And I just had a video hit like 2.5 million views on TikTok. And it was about how entrepreneurs, C students, usually hire the A students.
Right.
It's not the other way around. And,
Right.
and so in school, I think this is the reason I didn't get C's is because I was told, because I was in scarcity, I was told by my mom, if you get good grades and you go to college, you'll make a lot of money.
Right.
So my belief system drove my thoughts and my actions, which was I have to get good grades because I'm going to go to Harvard. I'm going to go to Yale. That's the path I'm going to go. So I haven't gotten below an A. I just had a very high standard. I did dual enrollment college education. I skipped a grade too.
Mhm.
I was like obsessed with that path. But then these gurus, these personal development gurus, Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, all these guys, these OG guys, Think and Grow Rich. I'm like, wait a second. I can get paid to learn. Now
Right.
I'm making hundreds of thousands of dollars while I'm making tons of mistakes and learning.
Honestly, when I went to business school, and then in fact, I was doing the math because I'm like, okay, I was making a decent income. I started in 1992.
Mhm.
And I'm like, so I'm going to not make an income for 2 years. Right. So even back then, my all-in cost was over $250,000. And I'm like, it's got to be really worth it. And the thing was back then, though, there weren't the options there are now. Like
Mm-mm.
the internet was just starting. There was no text messaging. There were really no cell phones to speak of.
Mhm.
So it was like, there was like the Gordon Gekko bag phone.
Yeah, all straight. Yeah, these bricks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was the kind of cell phone you had back then. So it was just a different world. Nowadays, it's so much easier. If I were born today, zero chance I'd have gone to college, zero chance I'd have gone to business school. I'd probably be doing like what you were doing, is starting businesses in middle school and high school and things like that,
Mhm.
getting the skills, So let's talk about integrity for a minute, because and so it's funny you bring up the dating coaching. Years ago, I used to do dating coaching, and I did it by accident. Literally, I was just commenting on other people's blogs years ago,
Wow.
and people kept coming to me saying, would you coach me? Would you coach me? Would you coach me? I'm like, not interested. To like, $200 an hour, not interested. $500 an hour, not interested. $1,000 an hour. Okay, maybe we should maybe we should talk. So I did that just with a handful of clients over the years, and I think I maybe coached a total of 10 or 11 people. And I think 5 of them got married.
That's
Like,
amazing. That's great
I
success.
had a pretty high success rate.
That's great.
And these are guys that, in fact, my wife jokes, because one of the things I would have guys do is I'd have them send me their dating profile and the pictures that they were going to use. And if you did dating coaching, I'm assuming you did the same,
Oh,
right?
absolutely, yeah.
And the one guy sent me, I'm not making this up, he sent me a picture of himself naked, upside down on a stripper pole as one of his profile pictures. I'm like, I don't even know what to say. But I got him married.
You got that guy married.
I got the upside down stripper pole guy married.
That's
Yeah.
impressive. I don't know if I have quite the extreme before and afters, but that's impressive.
But it's interesting because what I feel about sales in general is life is a sales call. Whether it's getting a date or getting a job, though I don't think getting a job is necessarily the right path for a lot of people these days. Or even having friends, right? Creating, networking, whatever it might be. It's a sales call. How do you do it? Your perspective. How do you do it with integrity?
Well, I actually have a formula because everybody asks me this. Bridger, how do you sell? How do you differentiate yourself from the slime balls, the sleaze balls, the car sales guys? Because most salespeople have a reputation right off the bat, a stigma of being slimy, unethical, and just
like used car salesman literally means that.
That's exactly what it means. That's what people think in sales. But I had some people early on that influenced me and told me different. So my belief was selling is serving. Right? I didn't get this. I was given this. It was a gift. So I saw sales as service. And so what I asked myself is, number one, people buy when they feel understood. So instead of going into the sale with an agenda to manipulate someone, I go into the sale opposite to understand someone. Because if I can understand who this person is, what their highest values are, just like Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. So if I can understand who this person is and I can love that person, right? I can actually, love is an action, right? It's helping someone do something, right? It's not just a feeling. It's actually helping them make the best decision for their life. Then I'm closing that person on the best version of themselves. And so I actually help a lot of salespeople that come from that kind of slime ball world where they're greasing people for deals. They're selling them things that they don't need, right? Hunks of metal or solar panels or these different things. And I have nothing against those people. You got to make a living. But I have a lot of guys that come to me and they're like, Bridger, dude, I feel like I've sold my soul. I don't have any purpose. I'm not changing anybody's life with a couple solar panels or some pest control or cars. And I call it commodity-based selling. That's the old way, okay? And pretty soon that'll get replaced by AI because there's no emotion to it.
Right.
But what won't get replaced is the emotional-based selling, which is a transformational sales. And that's what I do. I help people transform their lives. So, my specialty, and I coach all types of salespeople. Sales is sales. It's influence, it's communication, it's leadership. All those principles apply. But where I really have carved out a niche for myself is the coaches, the consultants, and the agency owners. Now, there's a lot of BS in that industry as well. But that's why I've invested over $370,000 of the last $1 million I've made. I put it all back in investing in relationships because I think relationships are the most valuable commodity on the planet. I care. Yeah.
So when you say, the 370,000 you've invested back into relationships, you mean that's mentorship that you've purchased? Or what do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So like last year I went to the Vault with Patrick Bet-David. I stroked a check for $16,000, right? To go to that CEO event. Right. When I was 18 years old, I stroked a check for $5,000 to get in the room for a mastermind. Right. So getting into the right room, sometimes you got to pay for access. After a while, if you know how to read people, and this is what one of my mentors, Ty Lopez, right. I've gotten to meet him now, been to his house a couple times. And this guy, he taught me a really, really valuable skill. Number one, you got to you got to love reading, right? The more you learn, the more you earn, right? Warren Buffett. So I couldn't read till second grade because I didn't like it. I didn't naturally have it. ADHD. I was a math guy. But then when I linked, right, what I valued, okay, so this is linking, right? So this is valuable for people listening. If there's something you don't like to do, but you need to do it to be successful, you're going to have to learn how to love it. And so I've learned how to love a lot of things that I hate so that I can bridge the gap and be successful. One of them was reading. The second one was reading people because I've had some bad relationships, right, both romantically and in business. And there was usually a smoking gun. Almost every time. I'm sure you've got experience. Yeah. Anybody in business has been burned. You've been ripped off. You've had these things. But what are you going to do? Not try? No, you're going to get up. You're going to learn again. You're going to figure out, oh, you know what? When they said that, I should have listened to them. When people reveal who they are the first time, you should listen to them.
Yeah. People, people don't really pay attention most of the time. It's, you've done a bunch of podcasting yourself, so you probably understand this, which is how you listen on a podcast is probably how you should listen in life, right? Because you're trying to direct the conversation. So you have to listen really carefully to what the other person is saying, but you're also having to think ahead a little bit about, what are is that interesting? Is there something there that we can dig into a little bit deeper. It's, going back to the dating thing, for me, this will sound crazy, but I think I went on over 1,000 first dates in a 5-year period. And so when I was telling our mutual friend Brady here, that what was unusual was something like 50% or more of the time, the woman at the end of the date would say, say it was an hour and a half date. In the hour and a half we've been talking, you know me better than people that have known me my entire life, and I know you better than people I've known their entire lives. And so I would argue that people buy from people they like and people they trust. And in order for someone to like and trust you at a deep emotional level requires authenticity, which requires vulnerability.
Mm. That's absolutely true, and I think the trust that you build is built on that authenticity, that vulnerability, and I think one thing you're gonna have to accept in life and sales is not everybody's gonna like you, and the more you try to please other people, the less people are gonna like you because you're just a chameleon bouncing around, right? So for me, I'm curious your take on this, like when did you really start to own who you are? And what were the downsides at first? Because there are some downsides, right? Some people aren't going to like you, but when you really own into it and you learn how to take the edges off who you are and your personality, I think it can really open a lot of doors for people.
For me, there were two big turning points in my life, even though me interviewing you, but hey, what the heck? When I was 9, I helped my mom detox from alcohol. So I didn't even realize she was an alcoholic at the time because I was 9. But by the time I was around 11 or so, I kind of was able to piece together what had happened. And so when, the peer pressure to start drinking and doing drugs and stuff like that around, 12 and 13 and 14 happened, there was no amount of peer pressure, literally no amount of peer pressure that got me to drink just because I was afraid it would be genetic and I'd be an alcoholic too. And so I just wanted nothing to do with it. Never really had a drop of alcohol till I was 35. And so like zero alcohol in college, zero alcohol in business school.
It's impressive.
And again, it wasn't, it was just like, it wasn't even a choice to me. It wasn't even an option in my mind. Right. And so, because I didn't want ever see that. And so once you've had to, and so I was, even though I played 4 sports in high school and was a good student, I couldn't buy a date, because I wasn't cool. I didn't drink. I didn't do what the cool kids did. I was the vice president of Students Against Drunk Driving, driving the cool kids home from the parties I wasn't invited to. So once you've had the march to the beat of your own drum once, it's not that hard after that. So, and then when I realized by the time my junior and senior year, it was all of a sudden people gravitated towards me because I was my own person and I never bent to, peer pressure. People actually respect it. Like the pendulum swung the other way. And then the other one was when I was slightly younger, when I was 24, I was misdiagnosed with terminal cancer and told I had 6 months to live. So that was obviously a life-altering experience. So those things just like, to me, if you're going to do it right, do it for the right reasons. And it won't always work out, but that's life. Like things aren't always going to work out. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, it does. That's crazy. Yeah, there's so much to unpack, and I think like you said, you'll come on my show. We'll unpack that a lot.
Sure.
But no, it's important, and the vulnerability piece. That's something that is still a struggle, right? Because in order to be vulnerable, you have to almost kind of risk something. You have to risk a part of yourself that could be rejected, right? A lot of people struggle with that. Why do you? I mean, not to flip the script again, but
no, but so it's funny. I don't see it. I don't frame it that way. So the way I reframe it slightly is I don't see an alternative. So here's how I think about it. So let's go back to the dating analogy again. So if you put 100 women in a room, okay, there's probably 15 that just on pure physicality, be like, yeah, they might be interesting. And then if I spend time with that 15, maybe there's 5 that I'd actually be interested in even thinking about, right? And let's flip it around. If you put me in a room with 99 other men and 1 woman, she'd probably feel the same way. Probably only 5% of the time, I'd be her cup of tea. So now you think about the overlap between my 5% and their 5%, really small, right? So that means most of the time, most people aren't going to be the right fit for you. Why should you be surprised when you meet someone and they're not the right fit for you? That should be the lion's share of the situation. And so to me, the sooner I get to that answer, I'd rather have that take 10 minutes than 10 weeks or 10 months or 10 years.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that almost kind of reminded me of like truth, right? Jesus said, you'll know the truth and the truth shall set you free. So you're just living your most true and authentic self. And in that, there's freedom.
And I would argue in the sales side, hopefully it's not 5%, but the reality is whatever you have to sell isn't going to be right for most people.
Right.
And really I think years ago I ran a telemedicine company. It was one of the 9-figure exits that we had. And what I think made that company successful was we were really good at figuring out who we were the right match for. And we moved on very quickly when it wasn't. And I would tell my sales team, like, I will take a fast no over a slow maybe all day long. Get me as many fast no's as you possibly can. I love a fast yes too, right? But get me a fast no, because those are the ones that are going to kill your time. It's the slow maybes that are going to suck up 75% of your time that you could be spending on real prospects.
Yeah, 100%. I have a word track that I use from time to time if I feel like that person's maybe in that slow maybe. And, I'll just basically say, awesome. So if I get to the end of the call, I walk you through everything and it's not for you, right? You don't like the program. It just doesn't make sense for you. It's not a fit at all. You'll tell me no, right? And they'll say, yeah. Right. And then I'm like, okay, awesome. And if we go through the program, it's everything you're looking for. You're thrilled about it. We can make the finances work. Then you'll tell me yes, right? And they're like, yeah. Okay. So then the place I want to stay away from is, oh, well, let me think about it. Let me call you back. Let me do a little research. Let me talk to this person, that person, and let me go, to Jupiter and Mars. And then when I'm back, and I smell the rainbows, then I'll give you an answer. Is that, I don't obviously throw all that in there, but, I'll say something like that. And then they're like, yeah. Okay, that's fair. And what I did right there is I basically just created exactly what you said, is like I just eliminated the gap. They're either like, yeah, this is what I'm looking for, or no. And just because they say no, it means no right now.
Right.
And I heard this from Grant Cardone one time. He said, if you're getting a no in life, it means either you don't know something, or if your prospect's telling you no, it means they don't know something. KNOW.
Right.
And so they're probably uneducated. And then I'll usually get curious, right? I think one of the number one weapons that any salesperson or just individual in general that wants to influence is curiosity. And this works with relationships as well, and communication, is if you get curious about what sort of, like in a romantic setting, your girl you're dating gets triggered over something you did or said. Instead of, getting offended or walking out or getting angry, if you get curious and you ask clarifying questions and you let her talk it out, they almost always solve their own problems.
Well, but back to the dating stuff, I remember when I was dating that, again, it was dating women that were very attractive, and very attractive women are not used to men caring about anything but their attractiveness. And so the fact that, it's not that I would never pay a compliment, but it's more like I was much more interested in their philosophy, things that guys never asked them about. And they would always say, no one's ever asked me that before. I would get that again and again and again. And it goes back to the curiosity. It's like, if you have genuine curiosity, then it's like, oh, this person's trying to get to know me. And that's true whether it's a sales prospect or a relationship prospect.
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me, and it ties back into like when you really get clear on who you are, it's very easy to create like a funnel. And that's what I did with the technology out there when I was 20 years old. This is really before I started following, the Lord, and I really built a strong relationship with God. I kind of wandered out a little bit for my own, kind of found, what was true for me. And this was back in 2021. And so I invented a dating funnel, and I essentially used all the online dating apps. And I started just spending, like, at the time, it was like 4 or 5 hours a day. This is in between sales gigs, right? I hadn't really had my first high ticket gig. I was doing low ticket affiliate stuff, was kind of in between, stuck, not making quite 6 figures, but like 60, 80 grand a year. And I was spending a lot of time on these apps, swiping and dating. And I realized that I could buy back my time once I got my high ticket sales job. My first month in high ticket sales, this was March 1st, 2021. I basically had ran out of leads, marketing, money. I had $32 in my bank account, was back to zero after making a pretty good amount of money, buying a BMW, not knowing financial literacy, right? I'd made it, but now I'm like, how do I keep it? And I'm broke. I get this high ticket sales job and my back was against the wall. And I think the reason why most people are not successful is they're okay with making good money. And they're never willing to risk good money to make great money. And I risked it. I went all in, and first month I made $8,000 in commissions. Second month I made about 12, and then within 3 months I'm making 20 grand a month at 20 years old. And I realized I can pay these Filipinos $3 an hour to do all the swiping for me. So I set up this dating system, create a Slack channel, create a funnel. And they're basically, and I create like 3 Tinder accounts. You can't really do this anymore. They put a lot of like IP tracking because they saw people doing this. You could probably figure it out, but it got a lot harder. And so I had the Slack channel with matches. And so I would train the VA to only put the types of matches that were attractive to me, you know, that I trained her on my type.
Right.
So she would drop them in, and then I'd go through and I'd put an emoji on the type of a date I wanted to go on. So if I put like a drink emoji, go out to drinks. If I put a, you know, steak or whatever. And so basically I would just go in at the end of the day and I would just hit these emojis, and I would have, you know, anywhere from 3 to 5 dates lined up, automatic,
Right.
booked into my calendar like an assistant. And it
Wow.
was incredible. And they would ask all the questions, get all the notes, just like you got your notes there.
Wow.
And I was the ultimate player. And then I tested, I was like, I wonder where the most beautiful women on the planet are. So then I created a couple more, tested different countries, and I went to like 6 of the most, I thought the most beautiful women on the planet. Sweden, Belgrade, Serbia, Spain.
Ukraine? Ukraine's got to be in there.
I can't remember why I didn't go to Ukraine. It was in 2021. Maybe
Okay.
there was some,
Maybe war, maybe. Yeah,
I don't know. But you're right though. The first girl I dated, her mom was Ukrainian. So you're right. But yeah, so I hit, and I didn't hit all of them, but I hit 6 that were really fun. And so I, you know, it was crazy. I got picked up by the Swedish girl that I'd never met for a first date, picked me up from the airport, we went to dinner. And so it was cool because I learned how to buy back my time. I learned how to filter for the things that I wanted, created a system. And then I started, my friends were like, dude, how are you getting on all these dates?
Yeah.
And I wasn't spending any time going cold approaching, you know, and so I started doing this, and then eventually I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. But it was, I learned a lot when it came to systems, processes, and, you know, building something. I mean, you sold a business, so you would understand this, right? Like the E-Myth. You got to create a repeatable system for success. Otherwise, is it truly success, or you just got lucky if you can't repeat the success?
Yeah, it's well, so it's funny. I went through the same experience too, which is the dating thing, and you got tired of it younger than I did. But it's not a great use of time. Even if you can create your own sales funnel, ultimately it's
you still got to go on these dates. And you know what I hated? I went on, you know, not thousands, but I went on probably close to 100 dates, you know, over a couple year period, maybe 18 months. Maybe not 100, maybe like 4, I don't know. It was a lot of dates though. I mean, it was dozens and dozens of dates. And I remember after all these dates, I'd basically, I'm sure you could relate, I've cracked the code to the right questions to ask to get them to open up. And like, and then I was like, this is boring, you know, because there's no depth. It's like I'm restarting with every date, every girl. There's no depth. There's no, it's like.
I took a different approach.
Yeah.
So you're right. You can systematize it. I intentionally didn't.
Smart.
Only because then it was really boring.
It was boring, man.
Yeah. And the thing that was weird was I would screen above everything else for intelligence.
Okay.
Because if there wasn't, otherwise I knew I'd just be bored to death. So
I didn't add that one in. I was too young and dumb. I was just looks. I was like, if they're attractive, throw them in. You know.
Right.
But
Well, it's
learned,
understandable.
Yeah, I learned quick that that's a waste of time. And then I just felt like, you know, all this time I'm putting in, like after a couple years, like what do I have to show for it? Like I could have built another business with all this time that I put in.
Well, but at least you did learn some systemization skills, and those are replicatable and useful other places.
For sure.
Well, so, you know, you've already, you know, been able to accomplish a lot. You're clearly a very smart guy. That's obvious. When you think about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what do you think about?
Mm-hmm. Well, I imagine a world where men have taken off the shackles that society, the people around them, that the enemy has put on them. I think men are shackled right now. I think there's a massive pandemic, right, of who are men. I mean, it's ridiculous. We got agendas being told that we need to switch to women,
right?
You know, to take away our power. And God created us to have dominion over the world. That means to have our own sovereignty, have our own power. And we're supposed to lead, we're supposed to protect, we're supposed to provide. And so I want to bring back biblical masculinity into the world. And I want to help set 1 million people free mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and financially over the next 5 years. I want to take the internet by storm. I think there's a lot of messages that are not being told in the light that I think I can share them. And so I'm really working on crafting the message that can help liberate the next generation of men. I want to create the greatest generation 2.0. My grandpa I never got to meet him, unfortunately. He died when my dad was 18. My dad's 70, turned 71 this year. So he was in World War II. He got a Silver Star. And the stories I heard, I was like, this guy was a gangster. I mean, this guy was like insane. Like this, the problems that the Gen Zers are complaining about, that keeps them up, that stresses them out, right? There's the reason we get called snowflakes, guys, because we melt under the pressure. And my grandpa was on the Battle of the Bulge between France and Germany fighting the Nazis, the World War II. And I remember my dad told me, like, he would always change his socks in the morning, fresh socks every day. And I was like, why? He's like, well, because he wore his shoes so long and it was so cold that they melted onto his feet. And he had to take a pocket knife to change his socks, cut off his socks.
Wow. So
if you're waking up in the morning and you don't have to carve off your socks, I think you're doing all right.
Well, I got to dig out. This is great. So I agree. So I'm remarried and my wife is first generation Afghan. So her folks were born in Kabul. She was born here in the US. And again, my experience dating, more Americanized women has been almost universally bad. And again, I think it's a lot of culture, a lot of culture and society, more of a victim mentality, toxic masculinity. I've never met a woman who said her choice, her preference would be to date a guy she's smarter than or to be with a guy that she's more successful than. That there might be some edge case female out there that I'd never met, but I met a lot of women. And you get a drink or two into any woman and you say, would you rather, they're not bragging about the garbage man they're dating or the grammar school teacher they're dating. They're bragging about their CEO or the lawyer or the doctor or whatever. The entrepreneur, and yet it's weird because in society we pretend like it's not true, and it's so obviously true.
It's ridiculous. And the worst part about this, that I think men are living in shackles and they don't even know it, is that they're getting brainwashed through the school system, through society, through college, through university. Even some of these companies, they want to create slaves. They want to create 9-to-5 golden handcuff slaves that are shackled to these 9-to-5 cubicle jobs. And I am on a mission to make men powerful again. Because like you said, what's the common denominator between CEO, doctor, lawyer, engineer, any of these guys that have power? Okay, but here's the thing, right? With Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think we need to teach men how to become more responsible, become leaders. And I think the main problem, you said the dating market, it's because we have a lack of strong leadership. Strong father figures, and I admire what you built. You're telling me off camera about the 5-minute coffee episode that you did with your daughter. I think that's incredible. I've never heard someone do that before, and I'm like, that's a great idea. Like, we need to be pouring into our, there used to be a sense of community. If you look at the tribes, because I love studying human dynamics and history and, human psychology, we're tribal people. We're meant to be in tribes and groups, and we're meant to belong. We're meant to have a common purpose and mission together to overcome barriers. We're meant to help each other, right? We're supposed to help the elderly, right? We're supposed to, the elderly is supposed to pass down the wisdom. We help them, right? And I just think we've lost that through the commoditized and transactional, capitalistic society.
Well, let me ask you, so, you've got the Andrew Tates of the world, and the thing about that I think is a shame is there's actually a lot in his message I agree with, but there's a lot I don't agree with too. And so it's sort of like, I think it's a really difficult line to walk, to be like, hey, I think, so my second wife was really struggling. She was making 6 figures as a personal trainer, working with executives back when we were in Chicago, and she was really unhappy. And I was like, look, your income doesn't change our lifestyle. So what are you doing this for? She was getting a lot of positive feedback from her family. Oh, we're so proud of you, and da-da-da. And I'm like, who are you living for, them or yourself? And she's like, well, what am I going to do? If people ask me, what do I do? What am I going to say? Nothing. I'm like, tell them you're retired. And I'm like, everyone wants to be retired at 30. You're retired. And she's like, as soon as she reframed it, she's like, oh, yeah, that works. But the reality is, most people, because I think of society, because of the mainstream media, because of institutions like college and K through 12 and all of that. It was funny, like when I was growing up, being homeschooled was a really strange thing. If I had a kid today, 100% they'd be homeschooled.
It's becoming less strange, you know, and
It's not strange at all.
I was strange as a kid, you know, about 15 years ago when I was homeschooled. Oh, you're weird, you know, you have problems, you know, or like, but you know, again, like you said, when you learn how to stand on your own 2 feet, I don't care what people think about my business now. It's like,
Right.
I am who I am. I do what I do because I know who I am.
So how do you walk that line though? Because, oh, you're just like Andrew Tate. You're a misogynist. You hate women. You think women, you know, should be barefoot and pregnant. No, I do think though that one, I think it should always be a choice, right? And I think that society's sold women kind of a bill of goods, that they're better off, you know, being a boss bitch and, you know, whatever. But I remember when I was dating, as a rule, I would never date doctors and lawyers. Like, and again, I preferred intelligence, but I wouldn't, because, and this is true with both male and female, doctors mostly think they're God, they're treated like God, and so they behave that way. And lawyers, again, male and female both, kind of professional liars.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like not
Very
necessarily
manipulative.
that. Yeah, you have that like 10% that are like insanely honest.
Yeah.
But the vast majority, not so much. And so how do you walk that line as you try to build a million men that are more traditional? How do you do that without being seen as misogynistic, toxic assholes?
Well, that's a great question. And I think it comes back to your worldview and your beliefs. Because if you look at Andrew's message, right, and I agree with some of the things, but I disagree with quite a few things, it goes back to his beliefs. And they're like, I believe that your beliefs are like roots in your life, right? If you imagine your life is like a tree, okay, and your roots are your belief system, and they hold up your identity, okay? And what you believe shapes who you are, and who you are shapes what you say, and what you say eventually shapes what you do in your actions, and then that will determine the fruit you have in your life. And so I'm a very, very strong believer. I believe that Jesus died on the cross so that we could have eternal life with God. We could be back together with God. I think that we were created with God. And I think the reason why men, when they're separated from God, they fall into evil. It says the heart of man is wicked, right? Some people think, oh, we're good people. No, we're not. If you leave people alone, they self-destruct. They don't get better. And it's only through, I think, this is my beliefs, through a relationship with God and through surrendering to the plan that God has for your life and uncovering who you are. Like it says in the scriptures that we are made in the likeness and image of God. So if we're trying to invent, and this is where I got stuck with the personal development that I've started to really, you know, build a foundation, build my life on the rock, which is these personal development gurus would tell me, you can be whoever you want. What? Yeah, you say what you are, you say enough affirmations, you can brainwash yourself into whoever you want to be. I was like, that has no purpose or meaning then. You tell me I'm not unique? This fingerprint, there's only one of them? You tell me I could be, this fingerprint can be whatever I want? Well, I think I have the capacity to, you know, I think I do have a growth mindset, but I do believe that God has a plan and a purpose for every single human that's unique, that's inspiring. It's the great adventure. And I think that people are, you know, Napoleon Hill talks about this, right? In Outwitting the Devil, he talks about drifting. We start drifting. We just kind of fall into however society wants to pull us into versus carving out our own path because it is dangerous. You know, it does have risks, right? Just like the Oregon Trail, the pioneers. The reward for crossing the Oregon Trail was incredible. You saw them, you know, Yellowstone, right? You were out there. You would get lots of land that would last generations if you did it. And if you didn't, you die. Right? And so what does that look like nowadays? Well, I think too many men have lost the eat what they kill mentality. And they have what I call paycheck dependence syndrome. And I'm here to eradicate it, okay? There's something that's coming that's going to get even worse. And
PDS, I like that.
PDS.
Yeah.
That's right. And too many people have it, and I'm here to eradicate it. And it's a symptom of a much deeper issue that we can talk about. But there's something coming that's much worse, and it's called UBI, Universal Basic Income. And it's going to kill 95, 99%. I don't know what the percentage is. A lot of people. It's going to kill people's drive. Because when people are hungry, the Bible says a hungry man will work hard. But if you give him just enough to sedate him, just like the Matrix, it's done. And so I don't agree with a lot of these concepts of, you know, obviously we want to make sure people are we can get people back on their feet. Like I had food stamps, like when my family fell down. But the goal, and the lady told us this, the goal isn't for us to get into food stamps and stay there, like universal basic income, and just get free money. It's to get back on our feet.
Well, I want to come back to the faith, because the faith thing is something I'm, you know, and it's weird.
Mm-hmm.
My life keeps putting religious person after religious person after religious person in my path. Like it's to the point where it's almost comical. One could argue it's a sign.
God's chasing you. He wants a relationship with you.
Well, and me in return. Like I have,
Yeah.
I have a good friend of mine, the guy who I film with when I'm in Miami. We do fellowship, many Sundays together.
Amazing.
And so does God have a plan for you, or do you have a plan for you? And how do you separate those two? Meaning you're obviously a very self-motivated, hard-charging guy. Seems like you've got a plan for you. So how do you, I'm having a hard time squaring your concept of surrender to God's plan for you with you having a plan for you.
Totally. It's a great question. I appreciate the question. So when I say I surrender my life to Christ and to Jesus, that means that I give up complete and utter control, or not control, actually. I do take self-control, but I guess the word would be I relinquish the outcome. I unattach to the outcome. There's a lot of other religions and belief systems that have understood this concept of surrender and releasing control, but what are you releasing control to, and what are you releasing surrender to? And for me, it's the Almighty God. It's Abba Father. It's the Almighty God. I mean, the Bible is a stack of proof. It's also a legal document. It's a spiritual will. It shows you how to claim eternal life through Christ Jesus, and it's a gift. You can't work for it. You can't earn it. Jesus Christ paid the price so that anybody can have eternal life. And that's the best. That's why they call it gospel good news. That's the best message that I've ever heard. And when you realize you are a wretched sinner, and when I grew up in the church and I fell out of it and I started sleeping with all these women, and I knew it was wrong. It felt wrong. I would feel over my conscience, when you do something wrong, right? And I eventually ate at me. And then I had a very powerful encounter when I went to a personal development event, and the guy started sharing his testimony about Jesus after I'd walked away from the faith. And this is when the people were telling me, "Oh, you can be whoever you want." How do I know who I am? Well, Jesus told me, "Why have you forsaken me?" And I just started bawling. And I just was like, wow. And it was like, it was just this energy, this Holy Spirit presence that I felt. And in that moment, I just raised my hands to the heavens, and I was just like, I'm done, because I was empty. I'd carved myself to the bottom, and I had the success, the money, the chicks and stuff, but I was empty. I was purposeless. I was meaningless. I was really just chasing my own tail. I was going wherever I wanted to go, and I was like, God, it's all yours. And I'll tell you why, because He gave me a vision. He gave me a vision. It was the most powerful vision. He said, Bridger, if you keep living your life the way that you're going to live it, here's what your life's going to look like. And I see a vision in my head of like 40,000 images of what my life will look like if I keep on the path that I'm on, with the dating automation, with chasing the money and the chicks and all the status. And I was in Miami. I had a massive yacht, these houses, right? They have these big yachts, massive mansion, and I was empty. It was a modern floor to ceiling window. I was hungover on a Sunday, partying, alcohol, drugs, whatever. A bunch of chicks left, whatever. And I was empty. I'd burned every single meaningful relationship out of my life, and I was just empty, and nobody cared about me. I had made millions of dollars, and it was all at another person's expense. And I felt that. And then Jesus said, but if you lay down your life and you follow me, here's what your life can look like. And then boom, it was the exact opposite. I had like a ranch. I don't know if it was in Montana, Idaho, Utah. I don't know. It was a ranch. It was beautiful. It was like Yellowstone. I had the rolling hills. I had a beautiful family. I had like 5 kids, a beautiful wife. And I was walking with God, like one with God. And that's what men are missing. They're missing oneness with their Creator. There's no guru. There's no mentor. There's no man that you can make an idol or God that will suffice. And every time that you do, you end up with what? A cult. And that's the problem with Andrew Tate, is he does not believe in the Almighty God. He does not believe in Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And that's the difference, is if I am going to be labeled as a new Andrew Tate, I will become the biblical Andrew Tate, and I will bring truth back to the marketplace. And that's something I'm willing to stand on.
Wow. The biblical Andrew Tate. That's a tagline.
Yeah. So,
so are you dating anyone now?
I am. I actually have been on a path of purity, which is super tough for me. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't party. But women was one of the things that I kept falling into.
Right.
And God was like, man, if you want to go the places that I have for you, you need to be fully surrendered in your life. You need to represent, because Christian doesn't mean you believe in Jesus. Christian means Christ-like. And this is the problem with Christians. This is why Andrew Tate on podcasts, I listen to him, says he's lost respect for Christians. You know why? Because everyone in America is a so-called Christian.
Right.
But guess what? Their mouths are filthy.
Right.
They're sleeping around. They're not helping people. They're selfish. They're not giving. They don't represent Christ and the message and who he was and why he died on the cross 2,000 years ago. And so I'm here I want to disciple men. I want to get them closer to the truth. I'm not your guru, right? Jesus is the ultimate coach. He's the ultimate mentor. He wants a relationship with you. It's not about religion. It's not about rules that you follow, that you unlock some magical place when you die. It's about a relationship with God that you can have a conversation just like you and I are having. And every person, I think, craves that. And when you unlock that, it's like, man, you know, God, what do you have for me today? What do you want me to do? Not your will. Jesus said, not my will be done, but your will, Father, right before he died on the cross. So for me, it's like, man, what does God want me to do? And dude, that's scary. When you see a big Goliath out in front, right? House of David, I don't know if you've seen it. Great show on Amazon Prime. Check it out. It's like Lord of the Rings and the Bible came together, and it's incredible. Yeah, I mean, it depicts the story of David and Goliath. So David, you know, is this scrawny shepherd boy, and Goliath is standing in the battle, and he's defying the God of Israel. I defy the God of Israel, 10-foot man, right? And all the other best warriors were scared to fight. And David said, how dare he defy the God of Israel that separated the Dead Sea? And he stacked faith. It's by faith that we're saved, not by works, lest any man should boast. And his faith, through faith, he went out there with a stone and slayed Goliath. And, you know, they conquered that army. And so for me, I want to live by faith. And it's not always easy, and sometimes it feels like impossible, and the walls are caving in. But faith, you know, you might ask, what's faith? Well, it actually talks about it in the Bible. And I remember, I'll have to think about the exact scripture. It might be Hebrews 10 or 12. But it says, faith is the substance of things hoped for that we cannot see. And, you know, that's one of the 13 ingredients in Think and Grow Rich, faith, right? Well, I think it's the first one, actually, in the book, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's, you know, I think if there's anything that I want to leave the audience with, it's ask yourself, who's God? And seek him. It says, Bible promises, if you seek God with your whole heart, you'll find him. And so it's not about believing what I believe. It's about exploring for yourself, who is God? If there is a God, who is he? And what does he want? What does he have to do with my life? And when you answer that question, then you can uncover who I am, what your purpose is, and how you play into this incredible, you know, story that's unfolding. From the beginning of time, Genesis, it's laid out, to the end of time, Revelation. Dude, I have perfect peace. It says there's a perfect peace that surpasses all understanding, because I know that the creators of the heavens and the earth has a plan. And I'm just a small fraction that hopefully makes an impact in the kingdom of God. And I get to be a part of what he's doing. When you get invited into the King of Kings to be a part of his mission and purpose, dude, that fires me up every day.
If you could go back in time, say 5 years, and because I think it's useful to live with as little regret as possible. Mm-hmm. Though I do think that learning from your mistakes obviously is a good thing.
Yeah.
If you go back in a time machine and tweak a couple of things, what would maybe be the one or two things? What a piece of advice you'd give the 19-year-old version of yourself?
Mm-hmm. The number one thing I would tell him that caused a lot of compounding, I think, mistakes that, you know, I think could have been avoided, and I could have seen success much quicker, and not just success monetarily, but with living in line with my purpose, getting around the right people, building my relationship with God. It would be, number one, do not make a man your God. And I think because I didn't have, like, my father couldn't show me how to be successful in business, and I had to kind of venture out, I started to try to find these other father figures that almost started to, if you're not careful, can take the place of a God. Mm. You go to these people, what am I supposed to do here? Oh, do this, this, and this. Isn't that basically a God? They're telling you what to do. I basically made these people almost an idol, and I would listen to them and I would do it. And pretty soon my life would end up, I'd make decisions like this one guy, he told me to, oh, this is a great girl for you, you know, and I'm 19, I'm impressionable, he drives the Lambo, he's successful. Oh, it's a great girl. I've dated thousands of, you know, women. dude, she's the one. She's a good girl. You should lock this down. She reminds me of this girl. I wish I would have wifed down. So he's trying to live his dreams through me. And I'm like, okay, I spent a year in that relationship. That's a year I'll never get back. And, you know, God, it says that God will work all things for the good of those called according to his purpose. So I don't have to live with regret or shame or guilt, because those are tools of the enemy. But I do think that if I would have made Jesus Christ the Lord of my life, and I would have made God the true North Star and submitted sooner, dude, I think I'd be so much further ahead. It's ridiculous.
Is there something you experience or a process you go through or something that when you're doing something that you're like, this resonates with me, whatever the thing is you're doing, whether it's people you're spending time with or what you're doing professionally or how you're making money or whatever, that feels like it resonates with your purpose or it doesn't? Like, how do you decide, how do you sort of, you know, meander your way through, yeah, this is taking me on the right path, or no, it's not?
That's a great question. So I've actually built, I call it a decision-making matrix. And essentially, it's how you make decisions is based on what you value. And so I've created mathematical equations for different things. You know, I'm a math guy. So let me give you a very, it may seem like a smaller subject, but it's actually very big. It's where you live, your environment.
Sure.
And so I actually teach guys, because a lot of guys grow up in their hometowns. And the number one thing, one of the top things you can do is move out of your hometown, I think. To get out on your own, jump the nest. That's what I did at 19, moved here 6 years ago. It's great. And when you're evaluating those cities, one thing I learned recently is you can create a matrix for those decisions. So I have 10 values, things I value. You know, warm weather, access to you know, good people, right? You know, the type of city or vibe or et cetera. So I put these 10 values and I score them from 1 to 5. And, you know, I could put these in. So I've scored all the different cities. And I live, I think, in one of the best cities based on the 10 cities I've scored. And so that's just for one decision, right? And I think one of the things that we can all agree on is your life is an accumulation of the decisions you make and the choices you make. And so I think that, like you said, you're looking to be more intelligent. Well, I think intelligence, you know, I think it was Naval Ramakant. He said true intelligence.
I was just going to bring him up.
Yeah? What, his quote about intelligence?
No, it was something he talked about, but keep going, and I'll see what I was going to say.
Sure. So one of the quotes I love from him that I heard actually from one of the guys I listened to, Dan Martell, he quoted him and said that in true intelligence, a true test of intelligence is the ability to create what you want out of your life. And I was like, wow, that's really powerful. If I want to create something in my head, can I do it?
Yeah, because I actually just saw that podcast. It was Chris Williamson, maybe, I can't remember, that he was just on, and he was saying that that the only thing, you know, he was talking about whether someone had emotional intelligence or IQ intelligence, and he's like, there's only one kind of intelligence. Have you been able to have the kind of life you wanted? Yes or no? If the answer is no, you're not that smart.
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, you're pretty smart.
Totally.
But what he was saying was the three most important decisions you're going to make are going to be, you know, where you live, what you do, and who you spend your life with, you know, your partner.
Yes.
And that that people don't spend anywhere near enough time. And he said, you know, a lot of life is lived in 4-year cycles, 4 years in high school, 4 years in college, you know, yada, yada, yada. And that you should, especially for big decisions, you should spend at least 1/4 of the time that the decisions. So if you're going to go to college for 4 years, you should spend a year thinking about if you're going to go and where you're going to go. And again, it's funny. I kick myself that I didn't decide to move to warmer climates much sooner. Like I spent the first 55 years of my life, 57 years of my life, whatever it was. I probably had 55 years of my life freezing my ass off. And now I'm like, what was I thinking? You know, like every day I got on my balcony, warm breeze, sunshine. It's kind of hard to be in a bad mood, you know, as opposed to Chicago, they have the frostbite index. It's like, oh, if your skin's exposed for more than 68 seconds, you're going to get frostbite. Jeez. I feel like that means you shouldn't live there.
Yeah. No,
let alone the flying bullets whizzing by.
Yeah, that's not a good place to live from what I've heard. I have some people that live there. I'm like, I don't know how you do it, man. And again, that would score very low for me. That's like a 2.2 maybe. That might even be a 1.5, you know?
Well, it's, you know, I see why you and I get along, because I would do exactly that same kind of matrix when my daughter was thinking about going to college, even though I was trying to talk her out of it. I said, well, if you're going to go, here's a matrix I put together, you know, acceptance rate, average salaries when you graduate, scored everything 1 to 10.
Yeah.
And he said, just fill this in. It'll tell you exactly where to go.
Yeah, see? And the thing I pair it with is I also think you should pray on it and
Okay.
ask God. So that's where I add my spiritual faith component is just because mathematically it makes sense, it doesn't mean it always makes sense. Sometimes God will use the underdog to create the top dog.
Hmm.
And so that's where faith, it's like, dude, like my friend, for example, he just moved to New York from here. I'm like, dude, are you crazy, dude? Like New York City? I'm like, what?
I agree.
I'm like, what are you doing? And so you know what his answer was? It's all about how you frame things. When people
Okay.
asked him, why are you moving to New York? You're crazy. You know what he said? Obedience.
Okay.
Obedience to God. God told him to move there.
Oh, okay.
He had a relationship and he prayed on it for over a year. He went and visited there
Okay.
and he did spend a year praying on it, reflecting on it. And it was like, dude, there was like just all this crazy, you call them coincidences in the out, but it was signs, you know. So I think signs, confirmations that like, this is where we want you to go. So yeah, I think that when you're trying to make a decision on your purpose, you know, you got to understand what your purpose is. And in order to understand what your purpose is, you got to understand who you are. And in order to understand who you are, you got to understand what you believe. And that's why I actually created a whole program on it. I called it Freedom Life the Game, because I think everybody plays the game of life, but very few know the rules and hardly anybody plays by them.
So you're a good-looking kid, you're successful, you're charming. How do you keep your ego in check?
Well, the only way to keep your ego in check that I've learned is to, again, give the credit to where it's due. And before I used to take credit for it, and it says pride comes before destruction, you know, haughty spirit before fall in Proverbs. And so I made the money and I thought it was all me. And then God's like, nope, let me take it away real quick. And so I've been humbled a couple times. I've gone to zero a couple times and even a little bit in debt building a new business. And so I know what it's like to be squeezed. And then when God gave it to me, back to me, I'm like, oh, this is you. So I just give the glory to God. And, you know, you got to keep good people around you. That's another thing. Give glory to God, stay humble, stay in the scriptures, pray, give the glory to him, but also be around like people who are humble that also, you know, challenge you to make you think and catch you. Cause it's in those moments, right? When you're like, you know, pride and ego can really creep up very quickly. And if you have people to keep you in check, your friends and stuff that are able to have those hard conversations that are honest with you and don't tell you what you want to hear, but tell you what you need to hear, then that'll keep you honest.
So as we wrap up here, going the other direction, sounds like at some point want to get married, have kids. So I'm going to go 50 years in the future. Your kids are in their 20s or 30s. What would you want them to say about you? I know, like, you've got to now imagine a wife and kids that don't exist and a whole bunch of stuff. But I'm just curious, like, as you think about that, how you think about it.
Wow. You and I are going to be best friends.
I'm excited.
This is a great question because I actually sat down 18 and I filmed a video for my future wife and family. And I was going to keep doing it, but I made a mistake in the video that I could share on another time, but I won't get into it. It's another story. But yeah, anyways, I did create the video and it's a very powerful exercise. Oh man, let me think about this for a second. I would just tell them I love them. I love them. You should be proud. I'm proud. Make God proud. And the number one thing you need to focus on is your relationship with God. Like that's number one. If you lose that, you're going to lose your soul. You're going to lose the whole purpose and meaning of life. And I would just pray and hope that my kids don't just listen to what I say, but hopefully I'm creating the man that they can actually just follow what I do. Because I've heard in parenting, you know, more is caught than taught.
Yeah, someone said recently to me, and I really liked it. It was that your shortcomings will be your children's excuses. And I'm like, huh. It really sort of hit me, and I'm like, that's something to keep an eye to, you know?
Yeah, that's powerful.
Well, Bridger, where can people find you?
Yeah, if you want to tune in to me, you can find me on Instagram, Bridger_Rogers. You could search me on YouTube. I've got a podcast show as well. We're going to have David on soon. We're going to be setting that up. And if you want the city calculator, okay, you're a young guy or you're I don't know, any age, and you want the city calculator, I'll give it to you guys for free. Just DM me calculator on Instagram, and I'll send it right over to him.
Bridger, thank you so much for your time, man. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks, David, for the show. This is great. So spontaneous.
I know, and I'm excited to be on yours. Because you half interviewed me anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll go deep. I like, yeah, we might have to do a Joe Rogan. There's a lot to unpack.
I appreciate that. Well,
Sweet.
thanks for your time, man.
Awesome. Thank you, David.